Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another bite-sized review for you today from the Necron faction, and this time we're going to be doing one of the Lord of War models, and we're going to be doing the Obelisk. Now this is widely known to be one of the worst units in our Necron Codex, and I'm going to try and fight the case for the Obelisk. I don't think it's as bad as we first once thought. But let's get into it. If you are buying this model, it's going to be £100 in the UK or $170 in the US. Now this box will also contain a Transcendent Catan Shard, or you're going to combine both of them together and have a Tesseract Bolt. All comes in the same kit, and now this model is going to cost us 300 points. So the same price as a monolith. Let's get on to the actual datasheet. So of course it's a vehicle model, so that means it's going to have the core keyword. It's also got the Titanic keyword, and it can also fly, which is something that the monolith cannot do. This thing can actually fly. Now stats of note, it's got an 8-inch movement. Yeah, it's okay I guess. But the main key ones here is it's got toughness 8, it's got 28 wounds and a 2+ armor save. Quite a lot of wounds there, and a 2+ armor save is pretty decent on top of that. Now of course it's going to be degrading once it loses wounds. It's going to be the movement, the ballistic skill, as well as the attacks that actually get degraded. I'd argue 2 out of 3 of those things actually aren't that important, and we'll get on to why later in this video. So first I'm going to start with the weapons that this Obelisk actually takes, because I think this is actually quite key. So it's going to be coming with 4 Tesla spheres. Now these are 24-inch range. Each one is assault 4, so that will be 16 shots. It's strength 7, no AP and only 1 damage. And of course the 6s will explode because it's a Tesla weapon. Now that on its own is actually a really bad weapon. We've seen it with the Night Scythe, we've seen it with the Annihilation Barge. Strength 7 and only 1 damage is pretty poor. Now this in itself is not even going to kill one single Space Marine model. That's pretty bad. If you're going up against Guardians or the equivalent of Guardians, then you will be killing 9 of those models, but they are fairly cheap. Now you are able to boost these weapons with the Malevolent Arcing stratagem for a command point to throw out extra mortal wounds, but there is a better way to actually boost these weapons, and it's within the ability section of this datasheet. So there's an ability called Hovering Sentinel. Basically, if the Obelisk stays stationary in the movement phase, then in the shooting phase, all 4 of those Tesla sphere profiles will be changing. So instead of having 4 shots per Tesla sphere, it's going to be 6. The strength goes from strength 7 to strength 8, and also the damage goes from damage 1 to damage 2. So all of a sudden you go from killing one single Space Marine model to now being able to kill 6 Space Marine models in a single shooting phase. Space Marine models are generally 20 points for the troops. That's 120 points in a single shooting phase for a 300 point model with 28 wounds. I don't think that's too bad of a return, to be honest with you. In fact, that's without any buffs and bonuses, which we're going to go over in a moment. But when you've now got 24 shots with exploding 6s, you should on average be getting 24 hits. And then yeah, the rest speaks for itself. And 6 Space Marine models are going to go down. In fact, if you're going up against a toughness 6 or toughness 7 model, you're going to inflict around 10 to 11 wounds to that same model. And going up against toughness 8, you're looking at around 8 wounds. Which is also not too bad either, to be fair. Also, don't forget guys, this is a Titanic model, so it can fall back and still fire completely free of charge because it's Titanic. So it's never going to be trapped in combat. It's also got the fly keyword, so it can fly over models out of combat if it needs to. But unfortunately, if you are falling back, of course, that's going to be classed as movement, so you're not going to get the best profile for those Tesla spheres. Now there are some other abilities, of course, the Living Metal ability, Command Protocols. It's also got the Deep Strike ability, and then it's got the Gravity Pulse ability. And a flying enemy unit that's within 24 inches of this Obelisk will have to half their move characteristics. And if it's an aircraft model, you get to roll 2d6. And for every point that exceeds the model's toughness, which is likely toughness 6, toughness 7 on those kind of aircraft models, that unit is going to be suffering a mortal wound. So you've got a fair chance of throwing out some extra mortal wounds. Now I'm not going to expect too much from it. The average dice roll is around a 7, maybe an 8 out of push. So maybe you can inflict a single mortal wound this way. But yeah, there are a lack of abilities. There's no Quantum Shield ability, so you can wound on less than a 4+. It's got no invulnerable save. However, that 2+ armor save kind of makes up for it. Even a -3 AP weapon, it's going to take it to a 5+ armor save, isn't it? Also worth noting, when it explodes, it's going to be D6 mortal wounds as opposed to D3. It's a larger explosion because, of course, this is a Lord of War model. But yeah, if this thing does remain stationary, I think it can do quite a bit of work. Let's get on to some stratagems and some synergy for the Obelisk. So first of all, the stratagems, there's 3 that I want to speak about right now. First one, of course, Curse of the Fair One, so you're automatically exploding. Now it is a Titanic model, so it will cost you 3 command points, not 1. There's then the Stellar Alignment Protocol stratagem, which is also going to cost you 2 command points as opposed to 1, again, because it's Titanic. But this one will give you the best bracket from the bracket table. You don't want to be hitting on 5s and whatnot, you want to be hitting on a 3+. I've already spoke about the Malevolent Arcing stratagem, but there's also the Solar Pulse stratagem as well. Just in case a unit is in cover, you can take away that light cover save and get it back to 0 AP, I guess. Now as for synergy, Lord of War models generally don't take the dynastic codes because they're normally taken in the auxiliary detachments, which auxiliary detachments don't gain any code. But if you were to take it in a super heavy detachment, you do gain the dynasty codes. So if you were taking it in a super heavy and you were making use of the Mefrit dynasty, you're getting a little bit of an extra range, 27-inch range as opposed to 24. Extra bit of AP on top of that, although that does get nullified with the Armor Contempt ability against some factions. But also this is a good chance to use that Talent for Annihilation stratagem, which you can use even if you are using an auxiliary detachment because it still has the dynasty keyword. So you can use the Mefrit dynasty stratagem, and the chances are you're going to be throwing out 3 mortal wounds because you've got 24 shots if you stay stationary, likely going to be 24 hits because of the exploding 6s, which then means on average you're going to be getting around 4 6s to wound. So it is capped at 3, but that's 3 mortal wounds, so yeah, why not? Another dynasty worth noting is the Nihilak dynasty, of course. When you've got 28 wounds and a 2+ armor save, it's going to be a real nightmare to shift, and it's actually a large enough model to completely surround an objective marker, so your opponent can't even steal an objective with one single model if you've screened it just right. Now as for unit synergy, of course the My Will Be Done ability, that's our main Necron ability. This is a core unit, so you can +1 to the hit rolls. So when you're hitting on 2s with 24 attacks, 6s are automatically exploding to make 2 more attacks. That's going to be a ton of extra attacks there. In fact, instead of having 6 Dead Space Marines, it's going to be 8 Dead Space Marines. And instead of inflicting 10 to 11 wounds on a toughness 6, toughness 7 kind of monster or vehicle, instead you're going to be looking at around 14. And as for the toughness 8 models, you were doing around 8 damage, now you're looking at around 11. So the My Will Be Done ability is quite nice when combined with the Obelisk. Now also, if you're pairing this with the Silent King, you get to of course reroll everything, because that's the Silent King's ability, rerolling all the hit rolls at range. And what I personally would do, if it is not a 6, just re-roll it. Even if it's a hit, you're only needing a 2+ to hit anyway. You've got the same chance of getting a 6 as you have of getting a 1. And any 2+ rolls are another hit anyway. So you may as well fish for those 6s. Now if you wanted to make this thing even more survivable, you've got the option of the Chronomancer with the 5+ invulnerable save. Now it isn't always needed, but the high AP weapons, -4 AP, -5 AP, they will likely give you a really poor armor save, and the damage is probably quite high with those. So having the 5+ invulnerable save could be quite helpful. Also having a Technomancer with a Canoptic Cloak to heal D3 wounds every single turn. And very similarly with the Canoptic Spider with a Fabricator Claw Array, he can do the exact same thing. The Luminous Ares can of course mechanically augment this core unit, so hopefully that will make you toughness 9 or give you a 2+ ballistic skill. If you do get the extra strength, then yeah, whatever, a little bit of a waste, but 2 out of 3 isn't too bad. And finally the Triarch Stalker. If the Triarch Stalker targets a unit, and then you use the Obelisk to target that same unit with the Tesla Spheres, you're going to be re-rolling 1s. Potentially a 2+, re-rolling all the 1s, loads of hits and loads of exploding 6s. Now let's get on to the summary. So as far as damage output goes, I think it's actually okay, but only while stationary of course. If it does move, I think it's absolute garbage. That strength 7 with 1 damage is not going to do anything. If it's not even killing a single Space Marine model that's only 20 points, then yeah, for 300 points that's absolute crap. But when it becomes strength 8 with 2 damage a pop, with 24 shots, that does actually make me take notice. The issue really does come down to the points cost, doesn't it? 300 points. I mean, it used to be a lot more expensive than that. It did get a points degrade some time ago. But if you are able to take off around 100 points per turn, then surely it's an okay investment. I mean, I like the fact that you can go after infantry as well as the bigger fish, the toughness 8 models, still doing plenty of work on all different kinds of units. And also it's going to be taking up a lot of your opponent's attacks. It's going to be tanking a lot of attacks, a lot of range attacks. Hopefully not so much the melee attacks, because once it's caught in melee, I think that becomes a bit of a problem. Yes, you can fall back, but then you've moved, so you've foregone that shooting phase effectively. Because yeah, the guns are kind of rubbish, as mentioned, when you do move. So you would need to probably screen this model, or alternatively, you can use this as a complete blockage to your list. Maybe you've got a Canoptic Reanimator hidden behind it. Maybe you've got one of your Catan shards moving up the board behind it so it can't be seen. There's lots of things you could do while hidden behind something as big as this. Now in the past I think I was a little bit overcritical of the Obelisk. Now I did say it was the worst unit in the Necron Codex. After looking at it in a little bit more detail, I don't think it actually is. Now admittedly it's still not competitive, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying throw it into a tournament list. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I don't think it's that 0.5 kind of score rating anymore. So for me, this may be a little bit unexpected, but I'm going to be going with a Planet 40k rating of 2 stars.